Hello, good day, everyone. Trust we are doing good. Yeah, you're welcome once again to Heart Family Talk Show. It's an amazing moment, it's an exciting moment, a moment of transformation and learning. Yeah, it's a beautiful day, and I trust your weather is actually good over there. Mine is a really weather actually. Yeah, so welcome back to Heart Family Talk Show, where it's all about the family. Yeah. So this week we actually are proceeding. We're looking at a very specific and important topic that says the cost of children. Yeah. Let it sink. The cost of children. The cost of children. Last week, if you remember, we actually talked about the gift of babies, the gift of children. Yeah, we actually elaborated on the gifts that children are. So today we want to look at the cost of children, and we have a key scripture that we'll be looking at today, and that's taken from the book of Luke. You know, the Bible was saying that, and Jesus began to speak in parables to them. Then he put forth a parable before them, that which of you intending to build a house that will not first of all sit down and count the cost if he be able to complete it, to finish it. Yeah, so that's the key scripture we are going to be emphasizing on for today's talk show. And yeah, which of you having an intention and a desire to build a house but will not first of all sit down and count the cost if you are able to finish it, if you are able to complete it. You know, we are in a time like so many young people actually have the desire to get married, have the desire to have, you know, to go into marriage without first sitting down or including in their plans, their plans for their children, like the strategy for their children. They never actually include children in the plan of the marriage that they are desiring to enter into. Many just have the desire, I want to be married, I want to be part of those that are married, I'm due for marriage. Like beyond that, what is your plan? Is the children you desire to have inclusive in your plans? Because if you don't have a pre-plan of the children you want to, you know, have in that marriage, and then have a picture of how you intend to raise them, if you don't have a plan of the kind of children that you want to raise, my brother, my sister, by the time you get married, and children start coming into your home, into your family, there is a misbalance, there is a destabilization, and then such people, such young couples, such, begins to perceive children from the wrong thought, begin to see children for what they are not. Remember, we talked about children as gifts. But when you don't plan ahead, okay, I'm going to give birth to children. What's my plan about these children? Did I just want to give birth to children and just raise them up casually? Did I just want to give birth to children? Like, many people don't make these plans. Many people have the vision of getting married without making the plans. And that's why we have so many children in the streets. That's why we have so many children that are dysfunctional. That's why we have so many children that are wandering about on the street. That's why we have so many children that are misbehaving, but their parent does not see anything wrong in it. That's why we have so many children that are misbehaving, and their parents do not actually feel bothered about it, because there was no plan, there was no foresight, there was no picture of the kind of children such people want to raise. Yeah. So do you intend, I'm actually emphasizing, emphasis added, do you intend to, build a home, build a marriage, have a marriage without first counting the cost of having children in that marriage? Like, is a whole lot. Children is a whole lot in family. In a home, children is a whole lot. Yeah, it's a whole lot. And until we actually understand this gift of children, we would actually perceive them and see them in the way that God did not see them. Now, what are the ways that God sees children? What are the things God sees children to be? Number one, God sees children to be his heritage. Yeah, his heritage. Children are the heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is their rewards. So when you don't plan for the children you want to give birth to, you won't see them in the light, in the perspective that God is seeing them. Children, God perceives children as gifts to families and gift to the world. Yes. But when we don't, you know, come to understand the gift, that's why it's actually very, very important that even before we get married, we actually do some kind of, equipping ourselves, about children, how they work, what are children, how they, stuff like that, so that we get equipped, not with the practical knowledge, but with the knowledge that is actually sufficient, that can actually help us even when that phase of our life begins to unravel. We are still going to learn a lot by the time those children start coming in, but it is ideal that we have a knowledge of how children is, how they operate, stuff like that. Otherwise, we begin to perceive them and see them in the wrong way. And whatever you see in the wrong way, whatever you perceive in the wrong way, you can never make use of it rightly. You can never utilize it rightly. You can never benefit from it, like you can never enjoy the full benefit of it. And you can never invest in that thing rightly. You would see, when you see it wrongly, when you see children wrongly, you you know you use them wrongly, you invest in them wrongly. Did I even say invest? You train them wrongly, and you do so many wrong things with them because of your sight about how you see children. God sees children as his heritage. God sees children as arrow that can be targeted towards achieving a particular, desire, a particular aim. I actually, made a scenario of an arrow. That when you want to shoot an arrow, you have a target. There is something you are aiming at. It's unless you are distracted or you lose focus that your arrow will hit the wrong target. But the moment you have a target and your eyes is fixed on your target, your arrow will hit its target exactly where you want it to. That's how children are. So if you have the right perspective of who they are, and you already have an intention in partnership with the Holy Spirit of what these children should be, you are having a target. So you are shooting them to exactly what you know that they should be, to exactly what you want them to achieve. Yeah. Now, there are some actually wrong perspective, wrong sight, wrong ways that some people perceive children to be, some parents, some couples perceive children to be. And that's as a result of no planning, no foresight, no, no foreplan about these children before they came in. So they begin to perceive children as, number one, a burden. It is very dangerous for any parent to perceive or see his or her child or children as a burden. Number one, you are already wrong, because God do not see children as a burden. But when you don't plan ahead for them, you don't open your heart enough to embrace them, to accommodate them, to receive them, to, number one, understand them for who they are, see them for what God sees them, you begin to see them as a burden. And when a parent or any couple begin to see children as a burden, the avoidance technique comes in. They begin to do all sort of things to avoid being around those children. Yeah. Some will stay late at work, all because when I get home, those children will rally around me. I know it's so frustrating. Why? Because your sight about children is wrong. Yeah, it's wrong. They begin to do things like, oh, I want to get a job where I go like as early as possible and come as late as possible. I don't want my children to see me. I've gotten a nanny for them to take care of them. I don't just want any burden of the children. That's the avoidance technique. They are bringing in an avoidance technique to avoid being with those children, avoiding spending much time with those children, avoiding staying around those children. Why? Their sight about children is already wrong. Yeah, it's already wrong. So when you begin to see children as a burden, by default, you begin to develop the avoidance technique. You begin to avoid them. You now want to spend more time with your friends than with your children. You now want to spend more time at work than staying with your children. You now want to get yourself engaged with things that does not really matter, all because you want to avoid those children, because you have perceived them to be a burden. So even though they are not even as much of a burden as you think they are, but because you have actually perceived them in that wrong perspective, you can actually see the blessedness of children. You can actually begin to see the gifts that is actually wrapped up in those children. You can actually begin to enjoy or exploit those gifts, to see that those gifts, become a global gift that everybody want to have access to. Yeah. So my question to you, first of all, as young people intending to have a home, to get married, have you had the plan? Have you counted the cost of having children in your home? Have you counted the cost of, raising those children? Have you even envisioned the kind of children you want to raise, you want to have? Have you? And number two question I have for as many that are actually married, who has actually been opened up to the face of having children, are you already having a wrong sight of children, of who your children are? Are you already perceiving them as a burden to you? Or are you already even developing the avoidance technique? You're already trying to do things to avoid them. You want to spend more time at work because you want to avoid them. You want to spend more time with your friends because you want to avoid them. Even on a Saturday, on a weekend where you are supposed to, be around them, do a lot of stuff with them, exploit them, get to do so. You actually just want to create a schedule just because you don't want to be at home with them, because you have perceived them to be a burden. What are you perceiving children as? What are you perceiving your children are? You see them as a burden? God do not see children as a burden. On the contrary, God sees them as a blessing to your family and a blessing to the world at large. Another wrong way people begins to, see children, when they actually do not understand children in the light of God's opinion, and when they do not plan ahead, they do not count the cost of having children in their home, is that they begin to see children as a mistake. There is no child on earth, any child, is in one of my book, I actually wrote it. Any child under one of my book, that's the gift of children, the gift. Any child that could actually navigate his or her path and made it through to this world and life is not a mistake. I don't care the mistake that you, as a parent of that child, made. That child is not a mistake. I do not care the circumstances that surround the birth of that child, but for the fact that that child can make it alive, ill and healthy in this world, that child is not a mistake. So if you are perceiving a child to be a mistake because of your own mistake or the circumstances around the birth of that child, you're already wrong. God never sees any child as a mistake. If you say that child is a mistake, there are some persons who are actually looking for children but have not gotten. There are some persons, do you want to tell me, some persons actually go through, for some people who live carelessly, young ladies, and then get pregnant, There are some of them that do so many stuff to get rid of that pregnancy, but the pregnancy just could not go out. You want to tell me that that baby is a mistake? Of course no. They tried as much as possible to abort the child. They took pill, they went for an abortion operation, they did so many things just to take away that child because they didn't want to shoulder the responsibility of a child, but they lived carelessly. So they want to do away with the child, but the child still still maneuver his way and get it through to this world. But you can't tell me that child is a mistake. No matter the circumstances, no matter your careless living, as long as the child you give birth to could make it through 9 months without being miscarried, could make it through the 9 months without being aborted, could make it through the 9 months and go through the process of childbirth and comes out alive, it's not a mistake. Yeah, it's not a mistake. And if you actually look at many children who they were perceived to be mistake, they actually turn out to be great people on earth. It's just as though their destiny is even more specific, like it's even more great. Yeah. So if you are not ready to shoulder the responsibility of children, don't live carelessly. Don't open yourself to a phase where you begin to have children when you are not ready for them. Another greatest mistake is to see children as a mistake, because they are a blessing, for crying out loud, and you will never see the blessings that they are. I begin to wonder. There was a time I was so filled and overwhelmed with this passion of, I grew up in Lagos, seeing children in the streets, see children under the bridge in Oshodi. If you are in Nigeria, if you are in the part of Lagos, like I'm so overwhelmed with this passion. I'm like, I'm going to have a motherless baby, so like I will just be packing all the children. I was like, I will go through all the streets of Lagos, all the under bridges, and just be carrying those children, like an established and a registered motherless baby home, backed up with the authority of government. I'll just be picking them up and taking them to my my motherless babies home, or my children, stuff like that. That was actually, I was overwhelmed with that passion. I was like, I will go through with police, like with backup, start picking them up and taking them to care for them and train them. That it was so strong on me. That desire was so strong. The passion was so strong. Because I felt like these children are gifts. These children are blessing. These children are heritage. These children are their strategies. These children are arrows. Arrows you can use to achieve a lot. I'm like, what happened? Why would the parent actually just, you see some parents just give birth to baby because they perceive those children to be mistake, and just throw a newborn baby or some month-year-old baby in a trash can. Oh my God. It's because their sight about who children are is wrong. It's because they dabble themselves into things that will actually bring about the result they are not ready to face, or to embrace, or to shoulder responsibility for. So my dear brothers and sisters, mommies and daddies, if you are not ready to shoulder the responsibility, or to embrace the gift of children, or to embrace the blessings of children, don't open yourself up to activities that will actually lead you into that phase. Because there's a way God sees children, there's a way God perceives them. And until you begin to see them in that way and perceive them in that way, you are not ready to receive them, because you will abuse them. You will abuse them. You will see them as a burden. You will see them as a mistake. You will see them as an error. And by the time you begin to see them, it's already a failure, unless God intervenes. Because what it will result in those children never enjoying care from parents. It will result in those children living aimlessly, carelessly. It will result in those children becoming an instrument in the hands of the devil. It will result in those children become a prey. It will result in those children becoming vulnerable to abusers. We have pedophiles around. Those who their sexual desire is just to have sex with children. Because you will not care about those children, and then when you leave them to themselves, they are open up to so many vices, so both spiritually and physically, they are vulnerable. So have we count the cost of children before you enter that marriage? Have you count the cost of children even as you are desiring to have a marriage, to be married, to have your own partner, or you just want to have your own partner, you just want to be married, you are just filled with the emotions of being married, with the emotions, the fun and the everything, and you never sat down for a while to count the cost. Okay, if I want to give birth to children, how will I take care of them? What are the structures I've put in place? Okay, what is my mindset? What's my perspective about them? So, my young people, please count the cost. Because as parents, you are a representative. We are going to talk about that. You are a representative. Everyone that has a child is a representative. So will you represent correctly or wrongly? So we should perceive children from the lens of God. We should see children for what God sees them. We should understand them. It's a whole lot of responsibility. But when you see them from the sight of God, when you see them from the perspective of God, you will know that the joy, the benefit, the blessings, the gift that is about children is even much more than the responsibility. Yeah. Because they are your continuation. Children are the continuation of their parent. So when you perceive them rightly, you make them a positive continuation of you. But when you perceive them wrongly, you make them a negative continuation, the wrong continuation of you. We have so many children that are continuation of the wrongness of their parents. Their parents live wrongly, and because their parents have a wrong perception of who children are, they train the children up in the way they continue the life of their parent, which is a wrong life. So what's your perception about children? What's your perception as a young fellow desiring to, get married and have a marriage, have a home? What's your perception? What's your plan? Do you plan to just give birth to them and just employ someone to take care of them? Do you plan to just give birth to them and just throw them inside the school as an escape route? And you plan to give birth to them and then develop an avoidance techniques, try to avoid them all day long? What is your perception about children? As you are planning, okay, I want to get married, I want to travel around the world. Okay, you should also be planning, okay, my children, this, I want my children, I want to enroll them in school for some years, for these particular years, I want to do this. You plan them too. You don't exclude them. You plan them along. They should be part of your plan. Because that's the only way we can enjoy the blessings, the gifts that children are. Yeah. What's your perception about children? Have you counted the cost? Can you finish the building? Can you finish the building of that home that you desire to have? Do you see any man who desire to build a house? I will not first of all sit down and count all the costs, not just some costs. You count the cost of the foundation, you count the cost of the building, you count the cost of the roofing, you count the cost of the windowing, you count the cost of the furniture, you count the cost of the interior decoration, you count all of the costs. You don't just count the cost of the foundation. So you don't just count the cost of getting married. You don't just count the cost of your wedding day. You don't just count the cost of having a home. You don't just count the cost of having a husband that has a good job. You count all of the costs attached to a marriage, inclusive of children and their upbringing. So count the cost. And if you know that you are able to finish the building, you're good to go. Yeah, because you begin to see and perceive children from the right lens. So we're going to call it a date right here. And I trust that we have learned. I trust that our mindset have been shifted. I trust that we're going to sit with these thoughts, and think over them and count the cost. So I remain your host, Alfred Patience Victoria at Family Talk Show. So same time next week, we'll meet you on the same channel. Don't forget, subscribe to this channel, like this channel, show to us that we actually been a blessing to you. Share the link. As many young people, as many young people as you have access to, as many parents you have access to, as many couples you have access to, as many families you have access to, share the link and be a blessing. Subscribe and be a blessing. And be a blessing. And the Lord bless you. All right, see you same time next week. Bye bye. Stay blessed. Yeah, thank you.